right out the get-go, I was born into a very dysfunctional family, so there was no transitional period. It was just like, this is what you get right out the get-go. And so it was really normal for me growing up, and that was the norm compared to everyone else that I kind of knew growing up. Parents divorced at a very early age, and I think like the first real shift in my life where I kind of noticed everything went kind of gray was when my mom left. I was around about 4, and there was no real explanation. I know they got into a fight the night before, and then the next morning she had breakfast made, and then I noticed all of her luggage and everything was just packed by the front door. And she said her goodbyes. She ate breakfast with us, and then she just got into a taxi and left. And there was a 10-year period where she was just gone. No phone calls, really nothing. So there was a lot of just unanswered questions of what happened. And I was raised in a very strict religious background for a long time, and that had a huge effect on my life and my personality, how I interacted with others, and just kind of like my mindset overall in life. It was church 3-4 days a week. I wasn't allowed to hang out with friends in the school setting outside of school. It was just, I had my friends inside the religious organization, and then that was it. And constant Bible readings, Bible studies, just all the time. And any like family issues that we had was all brought to the church. And there was no counseling or anything like that. It was just like the elders of the congregation kind of was our therapists. And my dad, when he remarried, found a lady that just stepped in and adopted me and my sister. And when she first came in, we went to court. They were trying to give my birth mother an opportunity to kind of step in and see if she wanted to try this. It was visitation, any sort of contact at that point. And she agreed to see us on the weekends and then like a day during the week, and it went good for a little while. And then she just stopped showing up. And so there was a lot of times with my sister, I think it really, like I saw that impact her life a lot too, was when we'd be waiting on the front porch with our backpacks all ready to go for the weekend, and then she would just never show up. And when time came that my stepmom wanted to adopt me and my sister, my mom never showed up to court to fight for her rights. And they gave her a couple opportunities, and she just never showed up. And so they signed the paperwork, and my birth mom, lost her rights, and Liga was no longer our mom. And things were really good for a good period of time. She clothed us. She didn't work. My dad worked in the oil field, so he was gone a lot. So she really stepped in and just was that positive motherly role figure in our life. And she brought us around her family, and her family really stepped in and helped us out a lot. And then her and my father had 2 kids of their own, and things changed drastically after that. And we kind of fell into that stepchild role where we were just kind of subtly placed on the back burner, and the other 2 siblings were kind of like the key highlight of their lives now. And we were still getting attention. I mean, we were still being fed, clothed, and school and everything, but the connection just kind of disappeared. And so there was a lot of, upon everything with my mom leaving and this new lady coming in and kind of taking over, and then now we're just kind of stuck back on that back burner. I noticed that depression really set in, and I didn't know anything about like mental illness, substance abuse. Like I knew my dad, he drank a lot, family, that was just a normal thing. I thought everybody just did that. But I didn't know how to talk about it or verbalize anything I was struggling with inside. And so my first instinct was just to push it down, let it sit. And so I just had this like graveyard inside of me where I would just stick everything, and it just got locked up. My father started to really struggle, and he was picking up more hours of work after a couple years. And so he was really hardly ever home. He was taking jobs out of state and working in the oil field. You know, it was pretty normal for him to just be gone. And so it was just me, my sister, and then the two new siblings that had come into our lives, and then our stepmom. And so my father really didn't do a whole lot of parenting. And when he did, it was just like my stepmom would tell him like, "Hey, well, they're doing this," and then he would just kind of step in, talk to us. But there was no real like coaching, counseling, or it was let's do this. And I noticed he was drinking a lot more over time, and then less and less time he was there at the house. And I think that started to affect my stepmom, him not being there, and then with all of us kids, I think she was just getting stressed, and then she started drinking. And her attitude and the way she talked to us and kind of took care of us really shifted and went downhill from there. And we were grounded a lot. I think I spent 7 to 8 months out of the year just being grounded. And I mean, some of it, I deserved, but there was a lot of it was just things that, I look back on it now, like I just needed some help. I needed to be talked to or just kind of validated. And so when I would struggle and act out just on how I knew how to, her first instinct was just, okay, well, you're grounded 3 months, no TV, no friends, no going outside. And so it was just a lot of time was going to school, coming home, doing my chores, and then I would just sit in my room. And being alone that long with everything going on, like I would just dwell and fester on all these feelings and emotions and all the trauma in my life. And I noticed the depression would just get worse and worse, just being tired all the time, not wanting to talk to people, and I slowly started sinking into this outcast. And I just became kind of like a wallflower, just sitting there. And I attempted to commit suicide at the age of 8, and from that point on, I noticed things just kept getting worse and worse. And parents continued to fight and fight, and one of the big moments that sent me off, my dad was home one night and after a long day of drinking, and me and my sister got into a fight, and I saw something in him snap, and he got physical with me and yelled at me, and then we got into a physical altercation in the living room. And it was that moment and afterwards that I just gave up, and I stopped going to school. We ended up reaching out to my birth mom, and she started coming around a little bit. And when I told her everything that was going on, just the dysfunction and the lack of connection, emotion, love in the house, and how my stepmom was treating us, I asked to move in with her. And I ended up moving with my birth mom after not seeing her for like 10 years, and it did not go well. I mean, it went good for a couple weeks, but with her questions, what she was dealing with on top of everything, when I finally got that taste of freedom to know what it was like to kind of be a kid again, sloughing school, I started partying and going out with all these friends, that I never thought I could have. And after all that, I remember my birth mom reached out to my dad and my stepmom and just said, like, things are not going well. He's never here. He's out with his friends, and like she just has no idea what's going on. And so we had a big sit down, and my dad and my stepmom just gave me the 3 options. Like, you can go down to New Mexico and live with your grandparents, or boarding school, or a boys' home, or a military school. And at that point, I was just like, and a part of me like was doing all this because there was something in me that was just kind of crying out, and like I wanted to be in trouble. Like I wanted them to kind of rescue me and maybe take me back home, and things were just going to kind of get better. And then when they threw those 3 options, I was like, so I went down to New Mexico with my grandparents, and when I got down there, I was expecting things to just be like super strict, but my grandma kind of was just watching from the sidelines on how things were spiraling out with the family, and that woman was my rock. And she put me into school, and really really gave me the attention and the validation and the love that I was seeking for all those years. And but at that point, I think like the mental illness and like the subtle, I've noticed the using started to happen, the drugs, the alcohol, and it wasn't enough for me. And, the drugs and the alcohol were kind of filling this hole that I felt inside of me. And but I noticed it wouldn't last long. It was always just like it would be good and then it would just slowly kind of fade back out. And so the only thing I knew how to do was just, I know how to fill that up though. And I got involved with a lot of lowlifes on the street, hanging out with the wrong crowd, wrong people, but I felt like I belonged with them though, and I had this sense of purpose, and so I just really dove into that and just let it kind of, rule my life. And from that point on, for the next 4 or 5 years, it was heavy drug use, and moving from couch to couch, state to state, and I would build connections and meet new people, and they would kind of try to bring me in and help me, and I would feel that love and that connection, and it would just terrify me. And my first, like, that fight or flight was like, I need to go, I need to run. And no matter who it was, what situation, I had good jobs, and was living with good people, but I would 86 it, run, and not tell anybody. And that was my MO for a long time, was just ghosting people, running constantly, and never staying in one place long enough to really set any roots. And I dropped out of high school, dropped out of college, missed out on a lot of good opportunities. And I noticed like my self-worth was almost completely gone. And I think that had a lot to do with this, I didn't feel like I deserved any of that. The good job, like stable income, like some sort of connection of people that actually cared about me. And I would just base that off of like childhood trauma, my mom leaving, like how I got kicked out of my home. And, I would point all these fingers on how everyone had this key role to play and why I was in this position. And I stopped the using when I was about 18, 19. I lost a very good close friend of mine in a shooting, and I dropped the drugs completely, and I never touched them after that, just cold turkey. And I moved back to Utah, and I had my son when I was about 19. And I remember when he was born, I just had this overwhelming sense like, I think I have it. I have what I've been kind of looking for, what I wanted all these years. And, when that little boy came out, it was just like all the problems seemed to disappear, like those feelings, the insecurities, just like, I have something that's going to help me now. And, that boy was just everything to me. But even after I stopped the using, like there was still something wrong. Like the depression was still there, the anxiety, just constantly in this place of fear and panic. And when me and his mom got married after he was born, I got a good job, and she stayed at home with the kid. And it's still like I hit that point again where I'm like, this isn't enough. Like I'm missing something. And I would come home after working and I'd just be tired all the time. Like I wasn't on any meds that were helping, and she would point out all these things that were going wrong. And in hindsight, I can see that she was trying to help me, but I felt like she was just picking apart everything I was doing, and the insecurities would rise up, and I would lash out, and I would say things, do things that I never thought I would say or do. And I would leave her, walk away from her and the kid, and time after time, and I put her through so much. And finally the day came where we got into a fight. I walked out of the house, went to a friend's house, left her and the kid at the house, and when I came home the next day, she had all of her stuff packed and my son's stuff packed. And she said, I'm leaving. I'm not going to put up with this anymore, and this kid's not going to go through this. And she's like, I understand you're going through some things, but this kid deserves more. And that's when I started drinking a lot, and heavily, and it was just an everyday thing. And drinking gave me that liquid courage, and it would help kind of subtly, treat in a way like the depression, the anxiety, just how I was feeling. And but I remember just thinking, like, I'm going to be like this the rest of my life, and I don't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what resources were out there. I mean, I've heard about treatment and all these other things, but I'm like, weak people do that. Like, I'm not weak. Like, what I've been through, like, I was homeless, I've been on the streets, I've dealt with this. Like, I'm strong enough, And so I just had it set that I was going to do this by myself, on my own, and I don't need anybody's help. And that went on for a couple years, and it was like I was absent in my son's life, like constantly just not showing up to pick him up. And she would just subtly, slowly, over time, was just like, if you want to see him, you can come see him. If not, like, I'm not going to put any effort to bring him to you. And of course, I took that as like a threat, but my reaction was, okay, well, I'm just going to leave. Like, obviously, you don't want me around. The kid deserves better. And I went to Texas and worked at a casing pipe yard for a couple years, and was just drinking every day. I would work, go home, work, go home. I had a couple days off every month, working 7 days a week, 15, 16-hour days. And after doing that for a couple years, I was talking to my ex-wife, and I asked if I can come up on vacation and see the kid. And she agreed. And I came back up to Vernal, Utah, and she let me stay at the house so that I can just see him, so she can go out, hang out with some friends, and then I could just see him there at the house, babysit and stuff. And we got into a fight one night, and she kicked me out, and I snapped. I didn't yell at her, I didn't try to fight her, I just walked out of the house, and I had it set in my mind that I'm going to end this. It's over. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And a couple days later, after an attempt, I ended up in the ICU and got sent out to Provo County Behavioral Hospital. And it wasn't my first time out there, but this time when I was in there, after about 5-6 days, this lady came and talked to me and said there was someone from a treatment center that wanted to talk with me. And so I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I remember this gentleman comes up, and super well dressed, fancy car, fancy watch, and I'm just like, this dude's just here for a check. But I remember talking to him, and he's sharing his story with me, and I could just relate with everything he was saying. And he's like, I run a treatment center that I think you would be a good fit for, and I'd be willing to take you in. And I'm like, I'll think about it. And so over the next 2 days, I'm just pacing up down the halls, and why not? Let's just give it a shot. And when they picked me up the next day after I called them, told them I'd be willing to come in, I was terrified on the inside. And my best friend now came and picked me up, that worked at that treatment center, and I was just shaking, DT tremors, and just the anxiety. And for the first couple weeks, I just wanted to run. And that first day I got in there, it felt like home in there, and it terrified me, and it brought up a lot of emotions and everything. And of course, first instinct, I just wanted to run. And I'm not from out here, so I'm like, I had nowhere to really go, no one I could call to pick me up, but I'm like, anything's better than this right here, this uncomfortableness, I don't want to feel it. And I went and sat with 15 other people that I had never met in my life in that group. And everyone's going around and just like, my name's so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an addict. And I remember it came around to me, and I remember when I said it, that I was an alcoholic, and everyone just starts clapping, and I just started crying.